virtual campfire. I'm with Benni Sack, and I'm really excited because I met Benni around a real campfire. And that was, it was a campfire that was very unique, and we heard a lot of close encounter stories. We heard lots of pretty far out there things. I kind of found my people, I feel like. And it was at the Seattle UFO Network, SUFON, the July Skywatch party that they had. So that's where I met Benni. And during that weekend, I got to hear her close encounter story. And so now I'm really excited because you're going to share it with everybody.
The first thing I saw, Crystal, was your copper pyramid, and Jason came out and I was like, man, you really went for it. You got a copper pyramid? He's like, oh, that's my wife's. Like, he did not want to be directly associated with the copper pyramid, which is funny because, you know, he'd be doing the frou-frou. You know, he's into that.
Totally.
And you can't fool me, Jason. You can fool me about your age, but you can't fool me about your copper pyramid experience. Because I was worried because my recent experience and my recent exposure had been in the CE5 group, which works so hard on cultivating the metaphysical and the esoteric aspect of contact, that I was worried that I was going to run into, you know, more of like what I was talking about, where people are really fear-based. I definitely didn't want that.
Right.
So when I showed up and you're like smudging stuff and I'm like, okay. And then, you know, I don't want to speak too much about like the personal interactions that I had with some people because I want them to keep their anonymity if they wanted to, but the broad range of experiences that I never thought that I would meet people personally that had that level and depth of experience to share about their own personal contact felt super miraculous to me. And then that they were just such happy people, you know, doing their like Elaine Bennett dances and just like having such a goofball, wonderful experience. And then people who didn't even know they were into it. And then they just showed up and like, oh, it turns out I am into this, you know, like just having that kind of like that convergence of like everything on top of this mountain with two sweet, you know, elders and their, you know, guns and their, you know, like it was fine. Like it was a wonderful experience, and it was nothing like what I thought it was going to be, and so much more.
See, I had the exact same feeling. I was excited to go, like, and of course I had to really convince Jason to go, and he doesn't really like camping, and this was pretty remote. And so I think that, you know, he clearly brought more than needed, but then I had to bring my copper pyramid, so I can't really talk about how much crap he brought because I'm bringing like crystal singing bowls and a copper pyramid there onto the top of the mountain. So it's like, that's a little excessive as well.
You have it. You can bring it all. Bring everything.
Totally. Like, let's just fill this truck with as much stuff as we can put in it.
Now let's hear Benni's first extraterrestrial encounter.
So if you just want to take us back to where it was, what happened,
sure,
wherever you want to start.
Okay, so the experience that we were talking about around the campfire was people were encouraged to give their like first like contact story. And my contact story happened, the first one that I remember, right? I mean, there's kind of this thread through the community that maybe we have things that we don't remember. I was 18 years old and I grew up in central Illinois, so about halfway between Chicago and St. Louis. And the nearest big city to where I grew up was Peoria, Illinois. It's about 180,000 people, and I went to high school there. And this story occurred on or around August 26th of 1992. So it was 18. It was my last night in Peoria before I was moving to college. I was going to, the next day, move to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, Illinois. My friends, so the bulk of my friends from that year were actually juniors. And so they were going to like take me out. We were going to have this little clandestine, like last night celebration around a rock quarry, which is outside of Jubilee State Park. So people who know the area, there's a rock quarry that may or may not still be there. I imagine there's probably still a giant hole in the ground near Jubilee State Park. So that is north and west of Peoria, not far from the Peoria airport. So I will say, full disclosure, there is absolutely an airport out there, if you want to call it that. It's not, a great airport. It's an airport. So it was nighttime. The first things first, I walked out of my job at Dominos because they didn't give me the night off. And so I was 18 years old, and I just didn't understand karma then, which I have like reaped that karma about 1,000 times in my own business since then. So there you go, Dominos, I got mine. I walked out because I wanted to spend time with my friends, and he was supposed to let me off early, and the other person didn't show up. And so I was working overtime on my last night in town, and I was just like, sorry, peace out, left my shirt in the office, I'm out. So my friends came, he did tell me to go fuck myself, which was nice of him and probably appropriate. So I walked out with my friends, and so Brian drove. So I don't remember exactly what kind of car Brian had, but it was like a late model car, like an older car, like kind of a junky car, but not a great car, but also not quiet. And we were, we got, however they got the beer. I don't know how they got the beer. Sorry, Dad, we drank. We drove out of town, on 74, and got off at the Kickapoo exit and drove north towards Jubilee State Park. So we're driving north on that road. It's dark, it's nighttime. Even in the summertime in Illinois, the sun goes down a lot earlier than it does in Washington. Crystal and I are in Washington, and the sun stays out super late in the summertime and goes down super early in the winter. So we said, it was like 9 o'clock-ish, but it was dark out. It was like black dark. And we're rolling north up this road, and we see this thing, and it is just stationary, as if it were sort of like a helicopter, but it wasn't helicopter shaped at all. And I want to say it was about 75 to 100 feet off the ground. It was close to the ground. And we saw it, and I said, Brian, what the fuck is that? He's like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. And as we roll towards it, it's not going anywhere. Like, we stopped the car on the road. It's a country road. So, and it's nighttime, even in the summertime, there's probably no one coming.
Right.
Just stop in the road. And my memory kind of points me like up and to the right, about 100 feet in the air. And I said, Brian, stop, turn off the car. So we turn off the car, and we roll down the windows, and we look up, and we see this thing that the best way for me to describe it is it was like a floating piece of it was a wedge triangle. It sort of from underneath looked like a thick piece of pizza with a bunch of multicolored lights underneath it. And it wasn't, I know that in some circles there's a triangular craft that's reverse engineered. This was not that craft. It was a floating piece of thick pizza with multicolored lights on it, and it was not making any sound at all. It didn't make
So that was your first Domino's karma that came from just the floating pizza.
Dominos sent their secret space program technology to harass me on the way to Jubilee State Park. I knew they were part of the conspiracy. No, but we were just like frozen for a minute.
Yeah.
Because that first time that you have a really serious hit of ontological shock, you think you might poop it. You're just like, and then all of a sudden I snapped out of it and I was like, Brian, we need to go. We need to go right now. We didn't even roll up the windows. He just threw it into drive and we took off. And we were looking behind us and I remember, yes, go ahead.
Oh, when you took off, were you going towards it or were you going, like away from it?
Away from it, for sure. We were going away from the vehicle, whatever it was, this silent floating thing. It didn't follow us, but Fran was like, it's gonna follow us, it's gonna follow us, keep driving. We were all like scared. We went to the quarry to kind of like have a what the fuck check-in. And we're like shaking and drinking terrible beer out of aluminum cans. And yes, Fran is fully freaking out. And she's like, what she said was, we need to make foil hats for our heads because the aliens can read our minds. So, and I was like, I don't think they can do that. Can they do that? I don't know. Like, I don't think they can do that. They're not going to be here, right? They didn't follow us. And they did it. Like, we did not have any more. And I want to be clear that, to the best of my knowledge, we didn't have any like missing time incident or anything like that. It was really just like, we saw something really, really strange that we could not explain, that may, or, having talked to and listened to like hundreds of contactees over the years, I know that some people have bookmark experiences throughout their lives. And so, but this was my first close encounter ET experience. And it wasn't a third kind or anything. We never saw any beings. We never had any, to the best of my knowledge, we did not have any messages conveyed. There really wasn't an energetic conveyance of any kind. It was just like, hey, guess what? There's this weird thing. Let's just show you this weird thing. Yeah. Oh my God, there's a weird thing, I don't know. I don't remember if I came home and told my parents what happened. I feel like I didn't tell them what happened. I feel like I didn't tell anybody what happened. And to the point where when Fran and I last saw each other Christmas of 2016, I was like, Fran, did that happen? She's like, I remember it happened. So, Fran and I are normal people. We're not on psychiatric medication. We're not, we're not like delusional folk. Like she's a great mom. I'm a great mom. We've both held down jobs. Like, this is not a crackers person. And I think that it gets, sightings and things that involve ontological shock get played down a lot. And I tried to wrap my head around why people do it. And I really feel like there's two kinds of ontological shock in people. And I think the first kind of ontological shock is, well, I don't know what I saw, and move on. Like, they just drop it like a hot potato. Like, I'm never touching that subject again. I don't know what it was. Let's not talk about it. And then there's the person who is me that's like, this opened a whole new chapter of my life that I can't close ever. And that for me is like the nuts and bolts of that experience for me was it was the beginning of a lifelong change that would mean that it's incapable of me seeing the world in the way that I saw it before. From this day forward, the world is different to me. and I have to wonder about every interaction that I have with reality.
I have similar points in my life where that I was no longer the same person anymore. It was like I completely shifted, and those shifts always bring a new like insight or dimensionality into like my thought process and my healing journey. And I really identified with you when you said that you question, like, did I really see that? Because I had a similar experience, but the thing that is a bummer is I was by myself. Mm-hmm. And so that is really hard because I'm like, did I make this up? But I don't believe I could have. And I'm pretty sure I didn't make it up. I think that I definitely came into contact with beings, and I think they continue to guide me. I mean, do you feel guided in a way?
Oh, yeah. It's hard for me to quantify all the ways in which serendipitous occurrences happen for me on a very regular basis. It is now a part of my daily driver. Like I can't separate the esoteric from the realistic in my world anymore, and nor do I choose to. And I don't try to live my life any differently than that.
Synchronicities that you mentioned, like I used to years ago, I don't do this anymore, but I used to always be like, that was so weird, I can't believe that happened. And always like question it and stuff. And now like things happen, and like I am around people that are like, oh, we're just with Crystal, that's just expect that to be normal. Like,
Me too. I love this. I'm going to give a shout out to my favorite podcast of all time, Aliens and Artists.
Yeah.
And
Aliens and Artists. Okay.
Oh my God, it's so good. Stuart Davis, hello. And he had an interviewee on just last week that was talking about, the fake, it's not a fake disclosure. It's just kind of a snoozeville disclosure. He was like,
for sure.
Honestly, the Tic Tac is the most boring thing that I have heard in a decade. Like it doesn't. Yeah, you're seeing everything that everyone else has been telling you they've been seeing for like ever, but you just were like, weather ballooning it or doing whatever it is you do with information. Like, you don't want to. Right.
Telling our stories, that's, I think, the most important thing that we can be doing right now. Mm-hmm. And sharing it, because I learn from you, and then you learn from me, and then whoever's listening learns, and the story gets deeper and richer. I noticed that a lot of people see things and then they have it in their subconscious, let's say, not even in their conscious mind, but it's in their subconscious, and it just won't go away until that little like whisper of whatever that is in your subconscious. You have so many dreams, or you keep painting pictures, or you write songs on it, or whatever, however it's coming through you, mm-hmm. It will come through you, mm-hmm. and eventually bubbles to the surface to the point where you have to start talking about it,
right,
to process it.
Well, that was, I take in a lot of information from Jacques Vallée, and I don't know if you know who Jacques Vallée is, but he, for people who don't know who Jacques Vallée is, if you've ever seen Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, the French scientist in that movie is basically based off of Jacques Vallée. And Jacques Vallée was one of the consultants for the film, as was J. Allen Hynek, who was part of Project Blue Book, during the late 60s, early 70s. And inherently, Jacques' biggest problem with Spielberg's treatment of the film is that it really doesn't go deeply enough into the high strangeness of contact, because we assume, and Spielberg portrayed, that these are extraterrestrial beings, and they very well may be, and we don't fully know. Or some of us claim to know, and some people have contact and that's of a different variety. Personally, I don't know. But what I will say is this: after reading a lot of Jacques Vallée and taking in a lot of his work, I would say that the chances are equally good that these are human beings from another time period or another plane of existence, that these are ascended masters that are coming to us in physical form to try to help us. There's a number of avenues that are unexpressed in the creation of that film, but I do deeply appreciate that they made any attempt at all to talk about people's psychic contact. And, you know, with the repetition of the songs, with the repetition of the shape of the Devil's Tower, with that like inner, like, I cannot stop until I get there. Why can't these people stop? Well, they've been given a message and it's not for us.
Yeah.
It's not for the government.
Like you were saying, the repetitions help because they're remote viewing to us, you know, so we have to bring them in our minds to us. So like those things do help. You know, whether it's a song or a location, whatever you're using to call out, it's got to be really solid in our minds. That's
Right.
it.
And it's not radio waves.
No.
P.S. It's not radio waves. You know,
it's heart waves.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are credible government resources of an anonymous nature who have been aboard craft who will tell you that it responds to thought, it responds to touch, it responds to bio and energetic feedback. It's not like a control panel on a plane with like a bunch of levers and flips. And, you know, yes, there are screens, but the screen responds to your thought. Like if you think about the moon, you're going to see a picture of the moon, you know, like, and it's like it hadn't occurred to us.
Yeah.
That was the way to go. And I'm not sure how I specifically come down on overt, on whether we have been overtly separated from our consciousness or not. I think that the human experiment has to be somewhat separated from their source in order to get the experience that we need to get through the contrast. I think that is important. But I also am not sure about, like, you know, there are folks that believe in, you know, an overarching nemesis that is about suppression. I tend to think it's just that there are some beings that bend towards the light and there are some beings that bend towards themselves, but not in the way that self-love or self-discovery, they bend towards separateness. It's just like a bend towards separateness. And when the left hand path, this is my left hand, and when we feel separate, it's just a really lonely existence, and it doesn't include that unity feeling like something really does care about me and protects me. It leans towards, I'm alone in this and I need to get anything out of this that I can get, and that's the only thing that works. It's just, and if I'm honest, I feel like that is really inherently the problem with American exceptionalism. That we're so fucking special as individuals that we don't need to do what anyone else tells us to do. And the fact is, it's not about not being able to do what you want to do. In fact, if you feel more connected to people, you can be more personally expressive than you ever have been, but you're multiplying the source with that individualism as opposed to feeling alone and isolated and separated.
I don't know why Americans tend to work and barely take vacations. You know, that is actually kind of a problem, I think, in our society, because if you spend a little time relaxing and a little time connecting with an outside world that, you know, because it's really hard to connect with something of a higher power than a human or an extraterrestrial or whatever you want to call it, like a god or a whatever, to connect with that, you definitely have to think outside yourself, you know. So it's like you can baby step it with traveling. That can really be a stair step to an enlightenment about yourself,
Yeah.
an inner knowing.
Yeah, just something about that, being able to step out of that small confined room in your mind and understand that there is at least something that's more expansive than that space. I had a sociology teacher in high school, in my small town, actually, before I transferred to Peoria. His name was Mr. Suter, Daryl Suter, and he described it as the cornfield, bean field mentality. And he, pretty much nailed it on the head. Just like, you can't see past this stuff. You need to go outside and see what the world is like. Like, you need to it's not that this place isn't good. You can still love this place, but it's good if you see other places too. I'm not actually sure how many people in my high school really took him up on that, but it was my clarion call to get paroled. I'll tell you that much. Like, I just was like, yeah, this is not my final destination. My kids are in London right now, which I think is great. I mean, it's an English speaking country, but it's different, and it's
different. London's great. Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited for them to hear about all of their experiences, especially in this 100-degree heat where almost no place in London has an air conditioner. And
right.
So I'm excited to have them home. They come home tomorrow. And so the first time that I traveled outside the country, except to go to Canada, I boarded a plane from O'Hare to Krakow to move to St. Petersburg for a year. Because my first passport was to leave this place for a year. And it was really kind of a dare, because there was this other girl in my program that was like, your Russian's not good enough to study overseas for a year. I don't even know why you'd be considering it. And I took it personally enough to be like, challenge accepted, bitch. I'm filling out this application right now. And I did it. And it was that first month was terrifying. Going from being what you don't recognize is a sheltered existence in a really well-established first world country to live in a kind of a 1.5 bedroom apartment where you get the big bedroom. The little boy is sleeping in the closet basically next to you, and the whole rest of the family is sleeping in the living room, and you have mosquitoes inside your apartment, and you're eating buckwheat kasha with a hot dog in it. I was just separated from myself in horror. Thankfully, my living situation did change, and I got transferred to a pretty posh, posh for Russia, an apartment. There's a small island in St. Petersburg called Vasilyevsky Ostrov. And so I lived on Vasilyevsky Ostrov with a host mom named Marina Mikhailovna Jugobova, and she was 5'1". She had a lot of gold teeth, and
love it.
This is a character. But yeah, so I lived overseas not quite a year. So it was 2 semesters, 10.5 months or something, from August until the end of May. Just short of being able to see Beliye Nochi, which is white nights, where, because it's so far north that in May, the sun never goes down at night for 10 or 11 days, I think. And
it's crazy.
It's really neat. So, but I 100,000% agree that traveling outside of your comfort zone in all ways, in all aspects, is good for the human condition. Outside of your space in any capacity, even if you're in the most comfortable place in the world, you're going to go through a forced catharsis. Or you're going to do what the girl did in front of me that got her apartment and freak out after a month and go home and be like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
You're going to sink or swim in that scenario.
Right. Yeah. But even if you sink, you still have so many life lessons, you know, and I'm sure life altering lessons. But
Sure.
I also think when you can become malleable enough in your mind, like where you open up to just a new way, I think that that's, you know, like you were able to, you know, find your place where you just kind of, you know, felt more comfortable or just accepted what it was that was different. It was just going to be different, you know.
But I also recognize in the broad scope of history that things get darker before they get lighter. That's the nature of this matrix, and that's the nature of human existence, and that's the nature of the hero's journey, which we are all clearly on and playing our parts one moment at a time, you know, whatever part that is. And, you know, in different heroes' journeys in our lives, we'll have different archetypes that we inhabit. So, but this is, you know, this is how things go. And if you are focused, yes, stay focused on the present moment, but also recognize that the present moment in its very nature is transitory, and these too shall pass. So.
But I wanted to say thank you so much for your time and for all of your wisdom and everything, and your stories and everything is, I think, and I hope can be helpful for others too. But it was very enlightening to hear, and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my extreme pleasure and a great honor to be sitting down with you at the campfire. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care. Bye.
If you have UFO sightings or close encounters that you want to share, please visit my website, crystalkelly.com, and send me a message.